I'm just going to say, Breonna, that's all she wanted to do was save lives. So with this law, she'll get to continue to do that. So we're grateful for that. She would be so, she would be so happy.
In life, Breonna Taylor saved many as an EMT, and she hoped to have done so as well based on the profession she chose. Unfortunately, based on a no-knock warrant that was executed in her home, that ability to help others was cut short. Fortunately, people like the young representative I'm going to speak with have taken up her name in more than one way to carry on justice not only for herself, but for others. I want to thank the House Representative for the 41st District of Kentucky, Attica Scott, for joining us today. Representative Scott, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the invitation.
Of course. Now, Representative Scott, as we know, we've covered the story here at the Law&Crime Trial Network. You, along with your 19-year-old daughter, were originally charged with felony rioting as well as unlawful assembly and failed to disperse. And that stemmed from your protest of what happened to Breonna Taylor. Of course, we later found out that those felony charges were dropped, but they're still pursuing those two misdemeanors. Before we get into the charges that you're facing in the Breonna Taylor's law, I just kind of want to just dive right into it. Personally speaking, what was your reason for protesting?
So I've been out on the front lines since day 2 of protests here in Louisville, Kentucky. We've been protesting for justice for Breonna Taylor for more than 130 days. On day 2, my 19-year-old daughter and I were tear gassed by the Louisville Metro Police Department. And I'm in the midst of a lawsuit against them with the American Civil Liberties Union here in Kentucky. The week that we were arrested, it was actually 2 days after the Attorney General failed to indict any officers in Breonna Taylor's murder.
Now, I know there are some questions about your arrest. I know that I've read at least that the arrest happened prior to the curfew. Can you kind of talk to us about that environment that you were in during the arrest and how that all played out just a little?
Certainly. So every night for over 100 days now, marchers go out and march throughout downtown Louisville. Sometimes they go into the predominantly white East End of Louisville. On this Thursday, they were marching throughout downtown. We were following them in a vehicle, and we were trying to get to the church before curfew. We were blocked in by a black militarized vehicle in a parking lot that also had another entrance blocked off with a concrete block, so we couldn't get out. So we walked to the church. Just as we were about to cross the street to the church, police stopped us, told us to turn around, then yelled, circle them, wouldn't let us go anywhere, and proceeded to arrest us with their guns in our faces, their pepper ball guns in our faces. And I was shocked. I've never been arrested before. My teenage daughter was with me, so I was very concerned about her safety.
Right. So you're protesting, you're exercising your First Amendment rights, you're there with your teenage daughter, she's following your footsteps in more ways than one and using her voice. You get arrested, now you hear about the charges. Talk to us about not only your reaction to when you heard about the charges, but also your reaction to when you heard that felony charge was dropped.
Well, first, my reaction to the charge is that when I asked, as we were sitting on the ground for about an hour, why we were being detained, no one would answer my question. So we had no idea why we were being arrested. We didn't find out until after the people found out, the people of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, the city of Louisville, and across the country. We didn't find out until we were released that next morning after spending 10 hours in jail. I was shocked that they would dare claim that I would try to burn down the library that's in my district, District 41, the district that I serve, that Black people desperately need. So we fought those absurd charges, especially the felony charge, and we're very grateful when those charges were dropped. Because quite frankly, Brett Hankinson, the detective who received a Class D felony, spent 32 minutes in jail. We received a Class D felony and spent 10 hours in jail. Ridiculous.
Yeah. Now, the felony is dropped. I'm a public defender in Brooklyn. Typically, when I pick up clients in your similar situation, it's not just one or two of the charges are dismissed when you're protesting, rightfully so, or however the prosecutor wants to present it. Typically, all the charges get dropped. So what are your kind of thoughts to hear this piecemeal, you drop the felony, but you're still prosecuting me for the misdemeanor? What are your thoughts on that?
I've always felt from the beginning that we were targeted. This was political. retaliation because they actually arrested several leaders that night, leaders who had been on the front lines at Injustice Square Park, leaders with the Kentucky Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression and the Bell Project, and they arrested me, someone who filed Breonna's Law at the state level. We've passed it unanimously at the local level. I have filed it at the state level. Of course, they wanted to retaliate against me for wanting to hold them accountable. And I'm also suing them for tear gassing me and my child. So of course they wanted to retaliate against me. And I feel like that's what the county attorney is doing right now by only dropping the felony charges and now making us wait until November 16th to face the 2 misdemeanor charges.
All right, now we brought up the Attorney General Cameron in this discussion. I want to throw to a clip of him discussing the movement in the Breonna Taylor's case.
Our team walked them through every homicide offense and also presented all of the information that was available to the grand jury. And then the grand jury was ultimately the one that made the decision about indicting Detective Hankinson for wanton endangerment. I think that in terms of what happened the wee hours of March 13th, in terms of that particular or specific date and what happened that night in the apartment, I think it is unlikely that there will be any additional prosecutions that come from that event itself.
Now, Representative Scott, you represent the 41st District. I'm sure you have an opinion on the lack of indictment here. I have no love lost for Attorney General Cameron in the way that he presented this case. I've been pretty outspoken about that in many ways. But what was your reaction to the lack of indictment when it came to charges towards Breonna Taylor? It really seemed like he presented a case where Breonna Taylor wasn't even in the room. What was your reaction to his decision and the lack of indictment here?
The Attorney General, Daniel Cameron, is an utter and complete failure in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. To have now 2 grand jurors say that they want to be able to speak publicly about this case says a lot. The fact that he did not present them with any other option but wanton endangerment says to me that he is a pawn of the Louisville Metro Police Department. He is not someone who is speaking for the people of Kentucky or for Breonna Taylor, and no one had the chance to truly speak for Breonna Taylor.
And let's talk about speaking on behalf of Breonna Taylor, because again, as a public defender, your work on this no-knock warrant, this Breonna law, if I could stand up and applaud you right now, I would, and I just want to thank you so much for that, both professionally and personally. Just briefly, why is it necessary, and what do you feel Breonna law is going to be able to do going forward for not only your district, but also your state?
Definitely. Very quickly, Louisville passed Breonna's law at the local level. We're expanding that. They ended no-knock warrants locally. Breonna's law for Kentucky will end no-knock warrants at the state level, but it would also mandate that officers involved in deadly shootings and other violent incidences submit to alcohol and drug testing. And it would mandate that any officer issuing a search warrant must have on their body-worn camera 5 minutes before and 5 minutes after issuing that search warrant.
Now, Representative Scott, I want to end with this. After your arraignment, you made this powerful statement. You said, quote, "These charges will not stop us. It will not stop the revolution," right? You can't stop the revolution. What do those words mean to you? What is it that you are willing to continue? You kind of touched on it a little, but I just want to hear it in your own words. What does that mean to you?
That means to me that since our arrest on September 24th, my daughter and I and the people arrested with us have continued to show up for justice for Breonna Taylor, for her family, for her mother, Ms. Palmer, her sister, Janiyah, her aunt, Bianca, and her community. And we will continue to do so until Breonna's law is passed and until the officers involved in her murder, and including the judge who was involved, are indeed held accountable.
Representative Scott, you make me want to move to Kentucky. Thank you so much for what you have done. Thank you for coming on. We appreciate your time. We know you're a very busy person, and have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Have a good one. All right, we're going to continue with more. We're looking back at the Iowa Kelsey Thomas case because we've got a new trial coming up tomorrow, but this time it's a bench trial instead of a jury trial, so make sure to come back after this break.